Diane is standing in the middle of a store, holding a jacket she genuinely likes, and she just put it back on the rack without a flicker of feeling. No sigh, no little story in her head about how she deserves it, or how she'll get it next month, or how life is unfair. She just hung it up and kept walking, and here is the strange part, the part I want you to hold on to for the next few minutes. 5 years ago, that exact same jacket would have wrecked her whole week. 5 years ago, Diane felt broke. Not poor exactly, but broke in that low, humming way, where the money comes in and vanishes and you can never quite point to where it went. She made $49,000 a year back then. She makes about 53 now, barely more. On paper, almost nothing changed. Her income didn't explode. She didn't win anything. She didn't marry rich. And yet the woman putting that jacket back on the rack is by any honest measure on her way to being wealthy, and the woman from 5 years ago was not. So what changed? That's the whole video. Because it turns out that long before the money shows up in the account, it shows up in your behavior first. There are signals, small, quiet, almost invisible signals that appear years before the balance does. And Diane had started flashing them without even noticing. I found 13 of them. 13 invisible signs that you are going to be wealthy inside of 5 years, even if, especially if, you feel completely broke right now. And I need you to be honest with yourself as we go, because some of these are already true for you, and you've been dismissing them as nothing. Here's the reframe, and it's going to sting a little. Being wealthy is not something that happens to your bank account. It's something that happens to your behavior first, and the account just catches up later. Almost everyone has this backwards. They think the money changes the person. It's the opposite. The person changes, quietly, in a dozen tiny ways, and then, years down the line, the money arrives to confirm what was already true, which means the signs are readable now, today, before a single extra dollar shows up. Let me name the thing so we can aim at it. I call it the quiet climb. The quiet climb is that stretch of years where you already have the mind of a wealthy person, but none of the money yet, so nobody can see it, sometimes not even you. It looks like nothing from the outside. It feels like nothing from the inside. But it's the most important stretch of your entire financial life, because it's the only part you actually control. And I'm going to give you 13 ways to check whether you're in it right now. Here's my promise. Straight, no fog. By the end of this, you'll be able to count how many of these 13 signs are already true for you, and that number tells you more about your next 5 years than your current salary ever could. Somebody making 30 grand with 8 of these signs will pass somebody making 300 grand with 2 of them. I'll show you exactly why, with real numbers, using nothing but Diane, and the ordinary life she was already living. Okay, sign number 1. Sign 1. You've started feeling nothing when you don't buy something. That jacket on the rack. 5 years ago, walking away from a want felt like a loss, like a small punishment you were inflicting on yourself, and that ache is expensive, because a person who feels deprived eventually rebels and buys the whole store to make the ache stop. Diane noticed one day that saying no to a purchase had gone quiet. It stopped feeling like sacrifice and started feeling like nothing, like choosing not to grab a pen off a desk. Watch what that's worth. When Diane stopped feeling deprived, her impulse spending dropped by about $240 a month. That's $2,800 a year she used to hand over just to soothe a feeling. And here's the part that should get your attention. That $2,800 a year, invested at 7% instead of spent, becomes about $17,000 in 5 years. So the true price of that old deprived feeling wasn't the jacket. It was $17,000 of freedom she was setting on fire every 5 years just to make an ache go away for an afternoon. The feeling left. The money stayed. That's sign 1, and if walking away from something you want has started to feel oddly weightless, you're already flashing it. Sign 2. You know your own numbers by heart. Ask most people what they spend in a month, and they'll give you a vibe, a shrug, I don't know, a lot. Diane can tell you hers to the dollar. Her monthly burn is about $3,100. Her rent is $1,350. She keeps roughly $9,000 liquid, and she knows the number without opening the app. This isn't about being obsessive. It's about the fact that you cannot steer what you refuse to look at. The day Diane stopped flinching away from her own statements and actually read them, plainly, without shame, was the day the money stopped leaking through the cracks she was pretending not to see. And there were cracks. When she finally read 3 months of statements line by line, she found a streaming service she'd forgotten she had, a subscription she'd used twice, and a bank fee she'd been paying every month for 2 years. Small stuff. Together, it was about $70 a month, $840 a year, quietly walking out the door while she looked away. She hadn't been reckless. She'd just been not looking, and not looking has a price with a dollar sign on it. Try this yourself, right now, before the video's over. What did you spend last month? To the nearest 100. If a number came to you instantly, that's sign 2. If it didn't, that's not a moral failure, it's just the first crack to close. Sign 3. You've stopped waiting to be rescued. This is a big one, and it's mostly invisible, because it lives entirely in your head. There's a version of every person that is quietly waiting. Waiting for the raise, the windfall, the inheritance, the lottery ticket, the one big break that finally makes the math work. And as long as you're waiting for the rescue, you don't build, because building feels pointless next to the fantasy of being saved. Diane's rescue fantasy used to be a job that paid $75,000. She figured everything would fix itself at 75. Then one day she did something dangerous. She sat at her kitchen table with a pen and actually wrote it out. Rent, food, gas, insurance, everything, in one honest column. And the total at the bottom was $37,000 a year to live her real life, which meant that on her $49,000, there was already a $12,000 gap she'd been spending into nothing for years. She didn't need the 75. She'd never needed it. The rescue she was waiting for had been sitting in that gap the entire time. The rescue never came. She didn't need it. Stay with that, because it flips the whole thing. The moment you stop waiting to be saved is the moment you start saving yourself, and that shift shows up years before the balance does. Sign 4. You've gone quiet about money. Not secretive, quiet. 5 years ago, Diane announced things. A good month, a new purchase, a raise, a deal she got. There's a kind of person who needs the money to be seen, who spends partly for the audience, and that audience is the single most expensive thing most people never put on a budget. Somewhere in the quiet climb, Diane stopped narrating her finances to other people. She got a small raise and told no one. She started an investing account and mentioned it to nobody for a year. When the performance stopped, the spending that fed the performance stopped with it. Count how much of what you buy is actually for other people's eyes. Be honest. When that number starts dropping, that's sign 4, and almost nobody notices it happening. Sign 5. You feel strangely calm when other people panic about money. Watch yourself the next time the news is screaming about a crash, or a recession, or a market dropping 20% in a month. The old Diane would feel her stomach fall through the floor. The new Diane feels something closer to flat, almost bored. And it's not because she has so much money that she's insulated. She doesn't. It's because she's built a small buffer and a long time horizon, and both of those things turn a crisis into a headline. Here's the number underneath the calm. Diane keeps 6 months of expenses, about $18,000, in plain cash. That $18,000 doesn't earn much. That's not its job. Its job is to make her immune to panic, so that when everyone around her is selling in fear, she's the one calmly doing nothing, or quietly buying. Picture the real moment it got tested. There was a stretch where the market dropped hard, fast, the kind of month where the headlines used the word crash, and people at her work were pale and whispering about their accounts. Diane opened her statement, saw that her investing balance had fallen by about $9,000 on paper, closed the app, and made dinner. That's it. She didn't sell a single share. 2 years later, that same balance wasn't just recovered. It was well past where it had been, and the people who panicked and sold at the bottom locked in the loss forever. Calm during other people's fear isn't a personality trait. It's a balance sheet you can feel. That's sign 5. Sign 6. You've automated the boring part, so your own willpower never gets a vote. This one is almost too simple, which is exactly why it's invisible. Diane's money moves on its own now. On the 2nd of every month, before she can see it, feel it, or talk herself out of it, $400 leaves her checking account and lands in an index fund, and another $200 goes to savings. She never touches it. She never decides. The decision was made once, years ago, and then automated forever. And watch what that boring little transfer becomes. $400 a month at 7% is not $400. In 5 years, it's about $28,600. In 15 years, it's north of 120,000. She didn't feel a single one of those transfers. That's the point. The wealthy don't have more willpower. They have less need for it because they removed themselves from the loop. If your saving happens without your permission, that's sign 6. I'm not even halfway. Stay with me, because the next one is the one people argue with, and they're wrong. Sign 7. You measure things in hours of freedom, not in price tags. This is a whole different operating system, and once it clicks, you can't unsee it. When old Diane looked at a $200 impulse buy, she saw $200. When new Diane looks at it, she sees something else. She sees that at her savings rate, $200 is roughly one full week closer to, or further from, the day her money can cover a month of her life on its own. She stopped pricing things in dollars and started pricing them in freedom. A dinner out isn't $30. It's a small trade against a future morning where she doesn't have to set an alarm. That's not deprivation, by the way. She still goes to dinner. But every purchase now runs through a second question. What is this costing me in freedom? And that single question, asked quietly 1,000 times, reroutes an entire life. Read that again. Hours, not prices. That's sign 7. Sign 8. Your emergencies have quietly stopped being emergencies. Pay attention to this one, because the shift is so gradual you'll miss it. The car breaks down. It's an $800 repair. 5 years ago, that sentence was a catastrophe. It meant a credit card, or a loan from someone, or a month of quiet dread and skipped things. For Diane today, the same $800 repair is a Tuesday. She pays it out of the buffer, refills the buffer over the next 2 months, and never once loses sleep. Nothing about the repair changed. The car costs what the car costs. What changed is the person standing next to it. And here's the invisible part. The emergencies didn't get smaller, they just stopped being able to reach her. The day the things that used to be disasters became mild annoyances is a day almost nobody marks on a calendar, but it's one of the truest signs there is. That's sign 8. Sign 9. You've learned to say no without a whole speech attached. There's a tell that gives away a person who isn't yet in control of their money, and it's the over-explanation. The long apologetic story about why they can't come to the thing, or split the expensive dinner, or chip in for the group gift. Old Diane had a paragraph ready for every no. There was a birthday dinner once, an expensive place, and the table wanted to split the bill evenly, which meant Diane paying $90 for a salad and water, while other people had steak and 3 rounds of drinks. Old Diane would have paid it, silently furious, and carried that $90 of resentment home. New Diane just said, "I'll cover my own," mine was about 22, and slid it across the table, and then talked about something else. No essay, no guilt. Nobody thought less of her. The reason she doesn't need the speech is that the no isn't coming from lack anymore. It's coming from a plan, and a plan doesn't need to apologize for itself. Watch for this in yourself. The first time you decline something on money grounds and feel no urge to justify it, that's not rudeness. That's sign 9, and it means your no has finally gotten some spine. Sign 10. Your lifestyle is lagging behind your income on purpose. This is the quiet engine under all the others. When most people's income goes up by $100, their spending goes up by 110. Diane does the opposite. Her income crept from 49 to 53,000 over these years, and her spending, deliberately, did not move. She let a gap open up between what she earns and what she lives on, and then she fed that entire gap to the future. Here's the number that should stop you. That refusal to inflate her life, on just a $4,000 raise, is another $300 a month she never let herself get used to spending. Over 5 years, invested, that alone is another $21,000. The wealthy aren't the ones whose lifestyle rises fastest. They're the ones whose lifestyle rises slowest relative to what they could afford. If your last raise didn't change how you live, that's not you being cheap. That's sign 10, and it's the most powerful one on this list. Sign 11. You've started thinking in years and decades, not in paydays. Ask old Diane about money, and she thought in 2-week blocks, paycheck to paycheck, this Friday to next Friday. Ask new Diane, and she talks in 5-year and 10-year arcs without even trying. This isn't a personality quirk, it's a superpower, because compounding only rewards the people who can hold a thought that long. Watch what patience alone does. Diane's investing account, at $400 a month, is a yawn at year 2. By year 10, it's around 69,000. By year 20, it's around 208,000. And more than half of that is growth she never earned at a job. None of that is available to a person who can only see to Friday. The ability to hold a decade in your head is, by itself, a form of wealth, because it's the exact thing the money is waiting for. That's sign 11. Sign 12. You've started to feel a little bit alone in it. I have to be honest with you about this one, because nobody warns you. The quiet climb can get lonely. When you stop performing money, stop chasing every upgrade, stop treating every windfall as a reason to celebrate loudly, some people around you won't get it. They'll think you've gotten boring, or tight, or strange. Diane felt this. Friends stopped inviting her to certain things, assuming she'd say no. There's a quiet ache in choosing a future nobody around you can see yet. But here's what I want you to understand, that mild loneliness is not a sign you're doing it wrong. It's often a sign you're doing it right, because you've stepped out of a current that most people are still being carried by. It usually passes, and it almost always means you're early. That's sign 12, and if you've felt it, don't let it turn you back. And here's what makes that loneliness worth it, in cold numbers. The people who couldn't understand Diane, the ones who thought she'd gotten boring, a lot of them earn more than she does. Some of them earn double. But they're the ones one bad month away from a crisis, because every dollar that comes in is already promised to a payment or a performance. Diane, on her modest 53,000, sleeps fine. The loneliness was the toll. What it bought was a floor under her feet that most of those higher earners will never stand on. So when it feels lonely, remember what's on the other side of it. Sign 13, the last one, and the deepest. You've stopped needing anyone to see it. This is where the whole thing lands. The final sign that you're going to be wealthy is that you no longer need the wealth to be witnessed. Old Diane wanted money partly so people would know she had it. New Diane wants it for a completely different reason, one that has no audience at all. She wants it for the quiet, for the morning she can wake up without dread, for the option to walk away from something that's hurting her, for the wall of choices that money quietly builds around a person's life. When the reason you want money turns fully inward, when it's for your own peace and not for anyone's eyes, the spending that used to drain you just falls away on its own, because it was never really about the things. It was about being seen. And the day you stop needing to be seen is the day the money finally has room to grow. That's sign 13. So count them. Out of 13, how many are already true for you? And be fair to yourself, because I think you've been flashing more of these than you've given yourself credit for. Maybe you're sitting there thinking, this is fine for Diane, but my situation is different, my income's too low, my debts are too high, it's too late for me. And you might be partly right about the timeline. But notice something. Not one of these 13 signs required more money. Every single one was a behavior, a way of seeing, a quiet internal shift, all of it available to you today, at the exact income you already have. That's the whole secret nobody tells you. The signs come first. The money comes second. It has to, because the money is just the behavior, compounded. So here's what to actually do. Starting this week, not someday. This week, do sign 2, sit down and find your real monthly number. To the nearest 100, no shame, just the number. This month, do sign 6. Set up one automatic transfer, any amount, even $50, so your saving stops depending on your willpower. And this quarter, do sign 10, take whatever your next few dollars of extra income are, a raise, a side gig, a refund, and refuse to let your lifestyle absorb them. Feed the gap to the future instead. 3 moves. None of them require you to earn a cent more than you do right now. Let me leave you with the thing that's actually underneath all 13. None of this was ever really about money. Watch Diane again, standing in that store, hanging the jacket back on the rack and feeling nothing. What she has isn't the jacket, and it isn't the price of the jacket. What she has is the quiet, the sleep that isn't interrupted by a number, the car repair that's a Tuesday instead of a disaster, the no that doesn't need a speech, the strange calm while everyone else panics, the slowly widening wall of options standing between her and the world. That's what wealth actually buys, and here's the part that should change your whole week. She had almost all of it years before she had the money, because she started behaving like the person she was becoming. You feel broke right now. I believe you. But go back and count your signs, because feeling broke and being on your way to wealthy are not opposites. For most people who make it, those two things happened at the exact same time. The jacket goes back on the rack. Nothing dramatic happens. And that quiet, unremarkable nothing is the loudest signal there is. Now, if you counted your signs, and the number was lower than you wanted, don't close this yet, because the very next question is which single behavior moves the most money the fastest when you're starting from almost nothing, and that one has an exact answer, a specific first domino that knocks the others down for you. That video is honestly step 2, and I made it for the version of you that's ready to start tonight. If something in here landed for you, leave a like, just so I know I got the tone right for once. And if you want more of these quiet, honest conversations about money, the subscribe button's right there, no pressure. If one of these 13 signs hit a little too close, tell me which number it was down in the comments. I read them, and an honest one is worth more to me than 1,000 views.